I feel like shit.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days.
It's just one of those
happy
days.
The weekend comes, let's not go home.
It's just one of those days where you don't wanna wake up. Everything is everybody sucks. You don't really know why, but you wanna justify ripping someone's head off. No human contact. If you interact, your life is on contract. Your best bet.
Just knock it off, you scum bucket.
It's just one of those days. It's just one of those.
Happy days.
It's just one of those.
Happy days.
It's just one of those
Happy days.
days.
The weekend comes, let's not go home. Ready to make space.
It's just one of those days, feeling like a freight train. First one to complain, leaves with the bloodstain. Damn right, I'm a maniac. You better you, cause I'm fucking up your program. And if you're stuck up, you just locked up. Next in line to get fucked up. Your best bet is to stay away, motherfucker. It's just,
I'm losing my cool.
it's all about it.
Happy days.
It's just one of those,
Happy days.
it's just one of those days.
The weekend comes, let's not go home. Ready to make space.
My suggestion is keep your distance. 'Cause right now I'm dangerous. Right now I'm dangerous.
Something's happening to the bonds.
And my day keeps going this way and this way.
I'm gonna pop you one so you'll stop playing games.
Give me something free. Give me some. I hope you know I pack a chainsaw. A chainsaw. A motherfucking chainsaw.
What?
So come and get it.
What we got here is mythology, you know? See, now this here
Not Robert.
Right, I can always edit that out of the show. But anyway, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chief Moody, and welcome to episode 204 of the Mood of the Nation podcast. How is everyone doing this fine? Well, I was going to say Sunday, but I keep thinking it's live, but technically it's not. But anyways, thank you very much for watching this very episode. It's going to be a really good one, I'll say, regarding to that. Let me just quickly take that off the show, and then that should be fine and dandy here from now on. Excellent. So it's going to be a pretty good episode tonight because, of course, for the first time in a long while, yes, I understand that episode 200 had 4 guests on that show, technically speaking, but in terms of actually having someone on a separate episode, it's been quite a long while, actually, now I think of it. And today's guest is going to be a really good guest with tonight's again, it's not live with this episode regarding to that. So before I introduce my guest for today, I want to mention just now that episode 205 will be expected to be live this coming Thursday at 6 p.m. UK time and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The date for that would be, just want to double check my calendar. That is Thursday, the 6th of June. So, of course, in that very episode, as I mentioned on the previous episode, of course, 203, I did talk about that I was going to plan on talking about the news / controversy, if you want to, quotations about the popular song. Well, it's an old song, but it's becoming more popular because of today's political climate, and that is Ausländer Russ. I know many people within the nationalist scene has been talking about this, so of course I want to give my 2 cents on that subject matter, and I'll definitely keep an update on that for you guys as well on via Telegram and also on Twitter, or X as it's now going to be called. So yes, do check that out when it comes. And also, despite the fact, again, this is not a live episode, but it's a pre-recording, if you still want to send a donation to the show, you still can via PayPal or buy me a coffee. The links, of course, will be down in the description down below. Again, please don't feel obligated if you have to donate. It's there as an option if you so choose to. And any donation received will be greatly beneficial. And of course, appreciate it with that. Now then, let's get right into it, which, of course, will be my guest for this evening. Now, on Mood of the Nation, we're now on episode 204, which I still can't believe is that many. I've had many guests on my show, many people from England, from Scotland, from Wales, and from Ireland. Many people who are members within Patriotic Alternative, which of course I'm a member of as a regional organizer for PA Scotland, as many people know. Even people outside of PA, but many people within the British nationalist scene. Well, for my guests for this episode, it is the first time on the Mood of the Nation podcast I have an American guest on the show. I've always wanted to have an American guest on my show at some time. And then, of course, I saw Donald Kent's stream, and I believe it was one of the streams with the Patriarch. I'm not exactly too sure what episode that was, but again, I gave that a watch because, again, I have a bit of an appreciation for art and design. As I talked about on my show before, I studied art and design for a bit back in my college years, and watching some of those streams, it actually got me a bit interested in art again. So that's going to be a really good conversation to have with this gentleman I'll be having on the show. So, for the time being, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show for the first time on the Mood of the Nation podcast, Mr. Donald Kent. Just going to get the screen sort up there. There we go. So, Donald, you're live on the Mood of the Nation. Thank you very much for being here. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm extremely happy, and I feel like I'm putting my stamp on history by being the first American to be on your show. I'm extremely thrilled. And I have to tell you, I'm an absolute lover of patriotic alternative, a great love for the UK and Ireland and my heritage. So I'm Scottish, English, Irish, and French. So for me, this is a beautiful way to kind of reconnect with my people. And I appreciate you having me.
The internet's cut out. Oh.
Should we repeat that or start over?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I don't know what happened there. I think it was my internet cut out. Sorry about that.
Well, just wanted to say I'm extremely grateful for being on the show, and I feel like I'm making my stamp on history by being the first American.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much for coming on. Yeah, as I said just there with the intro there, my introduction with yourself was, I actually think it was one of Mark Collitz's stream he did quite a while back ago. Because, of course, I do watch his content from time to time, of course, being part of Patriotic Alternative. And I do know about the Patriarch, and I believe it was him, Patriarch, and, of course, he brought on yourself with that as well. So I watched that stream, and then I was, like, really interested to the point where I started to look into your work a lot more. And I noticed one thing that you did, of course, do a lot of comic book work. And I was like, oh, well, I've always been interested in comic book work in my life. So I thought, well, maybe I can have a further look into that myself. And sure enough, there was a lot of stuff there that I was really interested in. So that could be one of the things that we could possibly talk about. But actually, before I get into that, the major question I normally ask my guests on the show, whether, of course, they're an established content creator or an activist or anything like that at all, and it may be a bit of a cliche question to ask, but just for the context for this episode, what made you want to become a nationalist, and what exactly was your red pilling moment, if you will, regarding to that?
Well, that's a big answer, so I'll try to be very concise though. So it was a process, a long process. I grew up in a kind of very traditional family, so I had a good uprising, and my family just, a good devout Christian family and very nationalist, and, a very wholesome white community. Really the American dream. I grew up in that kind of American dream environment. And I had lived overseas. I lived in Asia for 5 years. That's a whole other topic, but it gave me a contrast of understanding who I am, my people, my history, my culture, and the greatness of that. And so that is something that I feel everybody should kind of do for some time, because it's nice to have that contextual contrast. So then I was an art teacher for some time. And unfortunately, I was placed in some of the worst schools that you could work at. That kind of race pilled me, if you will. I had my eyes opened very intensely in terms of dealing with Muslims and African Americans and the rest of that, and then the whole liberal feminist system of education in America. So that was an extremely difficult experience. And then the Trump election came in 2016, and I started doing some heavy research on Hillary Clinton, her crimes, and all of these various things, Julian Assange, all of these various things that were coming out on the internet that just wasn't on my radar. And I started recognizing the realities and the truths of how corrupt the government is. I started going way down that rabbit hole. About this time, Richard Spencer got on my radar, which led me to Jared Taylor, which led me to Mark Collette. And it's a kind of a wonderful sort of path, that a kind of domino effect, if you will, where I discovered one person, the next and the next, and kind of got into this network of nationalists and race realists. And so at first I approached it very academically, and I think AmRen.com, American Renaissance, is the best resource that I'm aware of for years and years of academic research, scientific research on race and DNA, sociopolitical factors, and how it all ties together with race realism. And having my background in education, it all connected, all the pieces fell into place beautifully. But it wasn't really until I started losing my friends and family over my nationalism. Through the internet, through social media. Right now, I'm very conflicted about Trump. I feel that he is compromised. That's a whole other can of worms right there. But in 2016, the choice between Hillary Clinton and Trump, it was very obvious. It was Trump, right? And I think we evolve as we become nationalists. We try to get to the bottom of the rabbit hole. We try to, totally escape the matrix, as it were. And so through this kind of painful, transformative experience where I started seeing the world split in half between nationalists and normies, if you will, or sheeple, as they call them, it was an extremely painful personal transformation that I went through. Being someone in the arts and music and education, you're just surrounded by nothing but liberals. You're completely absorbed in that world. And when every one of them lines up behind you and stabs you in the back, one after the other, it's a profoundly transformative experience. So I found a whole new world of friends and artists, creators, content creators, et cetera, et cetera. So that was my new family. And it just was very transformative. So I think what it boils down to, in a sense, is just aligning with truth, is just simply seeing the facts and accepting the facts. That to me, this is what's normal. But I've discovered through kind of, the psychology and the sociology of this situation is that largely whites in general are terrified of being different, that there's a kind of force of conformity that keeps them on the plantation, if you will, that keeps them within that kind of slave mentality, to just go along to get along and don't be different, and realizing all the pain that I went through with those kind of like relationship divorces with all those people, and all the kind of aggression that they used, the cruelty they used to try to get me to shut up and censor my views and blah, 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 all that, cut me off, ostracize me, and et cetera, et cetera. It actually just threw gasoline on the fire. It really just fueled me. It was rocket fuel to go further in. But then the amazing leadership of people like Mark Collette and Jared Taylor and so on and so forth, all of the content creators out there, that was just so exciting for me to be a part of that. I just can't explain. So on the one hand, you have the force of these people pushing me out, and then you have the gravitational force of all the people within the national movement pulling me in. So I realized, I'm not really sort of the shout in the streets activist type guy. I'm a musician, artist, teacher. That's who I am. So those are the skill sets that I bring to the table. And I somehow discovered the White Art Collective in all of this. So naturally, I just like flew right into that. And I right away started my own YouTube channel, Donald Kent Art. I started a show called Imperium Art on that channel. And I'm sure you can, put the link in the chat and get people connected to my content. So Imperium Art was the beginning of a long series of interviews with all of the people I could contact within our movement to say, hey, we have to take ownership of our narrative, our cultural historic narrative. That's been stolen from us, that's been brutalized, that's been demoralized, that's been warped through Hollywood and all of those other kind of degenerate, demoralizing, anti-white systems. So we have to take the bull by the horns. We've got to take the steering wheel again and be the owners of our narrative and reconnect our people to our glorious past through the arts. So being an art teacher, an artist myself, I felt, I'm the guy that's going to do that. I just sort of elected myself to do that, and so I kind of just grabbed the mic and got up in front of the classroom, so to speak. And so through that, I started this Imperium Art program, and essentially working with a good friend of mine, another gentleman in the White Art Collective who goes by the name Nullis. We created a program in which we interviewed people like Mark Collette and many, many other influencers, Jody Kay, Frody Midyard, Richard Spencer, Josh Neal, Joel Davis, and on and on. And then I was also on other people's shows like Millennial Woes and so forth. No White Guilt, just kind of did the whole program, so to speak. So that the Imperium Art documentary series is all of our influencers sharing their views on arts and culture and the importance of that. So that's just one slice of the pie of Donald Kent Art and that content. I could carry on. So one of the what I'm doing right now is the show with Patriart, Paul Patriart. And Paul actually came to me with the idea of let's do a live weekly art show on nationalist, patriotic themes. And so I adore Paul. He's fabulous. He's just like just a great guy. And for me, being an Anglophile, being like totally in love with my Irish, English, Scottish heritage, this is my window back into the homeland, if you will. So we have a blast. And then, Patriot being part of the patriotic alternative sphere, if you will, that community allows me to bridge the white art community into that community. So it's a very exciting zone that we're creating here. I feel like there's been a lot of changes in the White Art Collective over the years. Tragically, the founder of the White Art Collective died not so long ago. I led the sort of a kind of fundraiser for his wife and child, and this is a very long story. That's a whole other story there. But regarding Patriart and the weekly show that we do, the Patriotic Art Live show, that is very exciting. We come up with a theme. We actually do polls on Telegram and elsewhere, and we try to get people in the community to decide, like, hey, what would you like us to talk about? And so people vote on that. Patriart pretty much sets that up. And then we'll get some information on the topic so that the show is also educational. We'll read off, for example, we just did a show on the theme of Greek martial arts and how that influenced, the Greco-Roman Empire and on and on and all. So it's historically rich. But then you're watching both of us do artwork live on screen, side by side. So there's a lot of fun, a lot of cool people that come in the chat, and people just sharing ideas and bouncing off ideas, joking around, having fun. And then when you have all these really highly educated and clever, witty people, that are in the same chat at the same time, you can only imagine it's really lively and it's very energetic. Patriot and I have discovered that 1.5 hours is not enough to do a work of art. So we're kind of breaking it up into part one, part two now. And that's just been fabulous. So that's right now the main weekly show that I do. I'm a freelance artist and I do artwork for all kinds of clients within our sphere. I feel very much dedicated to serving our sphere and helping out our guys. And so that's something I've been doing, children's book illustration and graphic design and this, that, and the other thing. So one of the projects I'm doing now is illustrations for a children's book series by Spencer Quinn, who publishes with Countercurrents. If I would assume people on our sphere would know Countercurrents, Greg Johnson. And then also I've been doing it's basically a 10-part comic book series graphic novel for another guy in our sphere who is, we're kind of holding back on all the information on that, but that graphic novel is going to be a big explosion on the scene because it basically takes memes and then transforms them into superheroes and supervillains. So if you could imagine all the memes in our sphere, it's, symbolically represented in these kind of comical superheroes, supervillains, and how they go after each other. So that story basically kind of, takes a jab at everybody in the political online world. So that's going to be extraordinary. I've got my own project called Militia Man that I've been working on. So it's just live art streams when I can fit it into my schedule, single dad, that whole thing. So you have to kind of balance those worlds out. Right now, I'm also getting back into writing songs again. So that's much more complex because that involves, recording equipment and musicians and this and that and the other. But I feel like I really need to start getting back into writing music. So that's just a kind of an overview right there. I hope that sort of answers your question.
I was just gonna say, yeah, absolutely. That's quite a lot to cover, but honestly, yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Because I know when it comes to people within the nationalist movement, everyone has their story on what made them become a nationalist and all of that. It's good that you mentioned about stuff like, say, the Donald Trump movement back in 2016, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Considering, again, because of the current climate, we're now in 2024. This year is going to be the presidential election coming up in November. And of course, Trump has been found guilty on certain charges, and he's going to be sentencing, or the sentencing is going to be happening this month, I believe. So I understand that Trump is no longer a very important person within the national sphere because, and I believe it was, as I said in the last episode with Mike Penovich, he says something along the lines of Donald Trump as being the most Jewish president in American history, which he's not entirely too wrong. I think it's still, in my opinion, it'd be really interesting to see where the presidential election would be going at this point in time, this coming November. But of course, you yourself, Donald, being American, of course, what's your take on that? Again, despite the fact that Trump is not exactly the ideal candidate, but again, in my opinion, I think it'd be really interesting to see what happens in November. So what's your take on that?
Okay. So I always take a meta-political view of things. I take a kind of a global view of things rather than a colloquial view. So I see politics as being run by a certain tribe that I think we know, the small hat tribe, and they tend to have sort of large noses. So that, let's just call them the tribe. And so they are really the primary political force that you have to first understand totally, which I'm sure our audience does, and then see how they work both sides of the chessboard. So there's how to say, when you're into metapolitical analysis for so long, you do get kind of used to how the game works, and the rules of the game will shift according to fact, like sort of unknown factors that come into the game. So I feel that the election was stolen in America in 2020. There were very, very many terrible things that were a result of that. America is under what do they call it? It's basically a kind of controlled destruction, a controlled demolition that's occurring in America now. And everybody, even Democrats and liberals, see this. For example, a good way to check the pulse of political culture is to look at comedians and what they can and cannot say. And so what's happening now in comedy in America and Canada is that, quote, racism is now popular in comedy. And they are going after, liberals and wokeism and Biden and everything full bore, like completely wide open. So with that being the case, it really, really shows, the Overton window has moved so far to the right culturally that nobody believes in anything anymore. That I shouldn't say nobody, but we should say that the left has pretty much lost its grip on the total control of things. So that being the case, just because the people are aware of the truth doesn't actually give us power. So there's still the tribe behind the curtain pulling the levers and getting the little puppet show out there, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe that Trump will be allowed to win the next election. I don't believe in democracy anymore. I'm very much a third position in terms of my own political views. But the illusion of democracy persists with the grand smoke and mirror show of entertainment and news media in America, etc. And how that works is that, for example, Trump losing this court case, etc. What that is, how I view that is that's meant to happen to enrage the public, to make the public even more, burning with Trump fever, even more MAGA, as you will. So what that is it's kind of herding the sheep towards something. You see what I'm saying? So I don't think that he's going to go to jail, for example. I think he'll pay some money. And it's really, I feel as if all of this stuff is really just planned out on a schedule month by month. However, there are some potential changes. So, for example, the Biden administration and essentially Israel because the Biden administration is just an arm of the Israeli political machine. So my view is that they have been trying to pull us into war. And then under wartime, how do I put it? There's better linguistics for this, but in America, when we're at war, they can suspend the election. So, and that could go on indefinitely and on and on and on. And so that would allow them to continue, or rather accelerate their controlled demolition of America. But that also could trigger something that they've never seen before, which could be a gigantic national revolt. As everyone knows, Americans have guns and we have patriots. And I mean, I forget what the statistic is. It's like for every American, there might be 5.2 guns or something or other, it's all. So there is a potential for losing control. Would the police force side with the government or with the people? Would they shoot upon their own citizens? Would the military shoot upon their own citizens? You see where I'm going? So I don't think the New World Order wants to find that out. I think that they don't care if we die en masse, but they do care about losing control. You see what I'm saying? So that is, I would say that I can't really give you an answer in terms of I could say it could go this way, and this way. I can give you options about what could potentially happen. But I can't tell you for sure. I don't have a crystal ball. I think that, yeah, right. I wish I did, but my feeling is that Trump is going to be allowed to win. There's going to be a great party, all the patriots, and yay, hooray, we won, we're back. Now we get low gas prices. Woohoo! Like, who cares about gas prices? Our people are being replaced and brutalized. You know what I'm saying? I could give you a list of all the things that Trump hasn't done that he didn't deliver on, and like, for example, building a wall on the southern border. That means nothing without militarizing it. You see what I'm saying? And we've discovered that there's gaps in those walls, and that I could go on and on. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but suffice to say, I guess, to answer your question, I feel that the New World Order, if you will, the small hat tribe, is going to position Trump, but they will have all of their people Trojan horsed into the system, and it'll just be business as usual under a new banner, if you will.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I would definitely be on the same boat, because after that court case, yeah, you're right in saying there was a lot of people that were not happy with it, and I think even I did see some people on, I'm going to say Twitter, but it's X, or that platform, where people were just like, well, I guess I'm going to vote for Trump now. So there's definitely a lot of people that are going to vote for Trump because of what happened with this court case.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's going to be interesting to see when that comes along in November. So while people will be celebrating, like, yeah, of course, like, we're back in the game, but I think it's going to escalate into more conflict in the Middle East, especially with the conflict between Israel and Palestine. I mean, I just have this. I'm sure many people within the nationalist movement might feel the same way, but I'm convinced if Trump does get in, that might have some further escalations with that part of the conflict. Again, because Trump, as we know, is bought out by Israel and all of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they might do some background deals like, hey, we'll have you be president again this time around, but only if you do this little favor for us, if you know what we mean, going on that sort of idea. But yeah, but that being said, it'll be interesting nonetheless when it comes to that. But enough about politics. Let's actually talk about art and design.
Right.
Considering that, again, you're an artist yourself, you do a lot of stuff for a lot of people within the movement. What I'm more interested with regards to your artwork is, of course, your comic book stuff. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the show, I've been interested in comic books all my life. My first introduction to that form of medium was actually stuff like, when I was a kid, of course, watching stuff like Batman the Animated Series, and I was just enthralled with watching that. And later on, just seeing a lot of all these other superheroes. Now, I understand the fact that comic books is not specifically for the superhero genre.
Right.
At the end of the day, it is. I would, in my opinion, it's the more dominant genre within the medium. Of course, there are other stories and other works that are comic book related that do completely shatter that idea. Say, like The Walking Dead, Spawn. Again, you can kind of make an argument that it is superhero related. Hellboy, that sort of thing. Many works with regards to that. So, and for a long while, I've always wanted to kind of not only just get into comics, but maybe even want to create my own comics. But that said, it was kind of a little bit like a pipe dream for me, kind of a thing. And I thought, well, I mean, yeah, it's a good idea, but don't know if that might be able to work realistically with regards to that. But after, again, seeing your work, I was really impressed with what I saw. And I just want to know, why specifically comics? What is it about that medium that piqued your interest and wanted yourself to actually, be a part of that and actually want to make comic books yourself, type of idea?
That is an excellent question. So, comic books are movies on paper. Comic books are film on paper. And so I don't have a couple 100 million lying around, but I do have pencil and paper. So the comic book creator is in a sense, you could say he is the film director, the writer, script writer, the actors, the choreographer, the set designer, the lighting, all of everything that goes into making a film. A comic book creator has to do all of that. That is huge. That's a crazy huge amount of things that you have to do in order to manage good storytelling, visual storytelling. So also comics, believe it or not, is actually known as one of America's unique art forms, like jazz, for example. And I think I got a little chip on my shoulder about that. I feel kind of proud about that. But I did my master's degree in comics in the classroom. At the time, I was a teacher and I was going for art education, etc. And I wanted to use comics as a form of conveying education, and then also to create comics for that purpose, etc., etc. So I did some pretty deep research on it. I actually got a grant to do some research on it, and got in touch with neurologists and learned about the actual neurology of how the brain functions in terms of putting words and pictures together. And it's a far more powerful way of transferring knowledge than simply reading a book. And then also, which is, pretty much what kids do in school, right, for years, right? So it's not film in the sense that film has the element of time built into the medium. So the editor will choose how long a scene is, or how long a clip is, whatever. Whereas with a comic book, you can flip back and forth in the pages. You can linger on a panel for as long as you like. You control the element of time within the medium, which is quite fascinating. So it changes things. And then furthermore, in the art of sequential art, the art of comics, there's a kind of a gap between what you're reading and what you're seeing, whereby the brain has to do the work to place those things together, to tie those things together. You're hearing your own voice inside your head reading the script, right? Or rather the dialogue, etc., captions, etc. So you are playing the role of the actors in your mind, which is owning the art form and integrating the art form much deeper psychologically and emotionally. Whereas a film, you're an observer, you're a bystander, and you surrender yourself emotionally, mentally, to the reality of the film. Suspended disbelief is what they call it, so that you can have a cathartic experience where you can be Batman, or you can be the villain, or the hero, or the mistress, or this or that, or whoever that you identify. And so, you're Frodo throwing the ring into in Mordor or something, and you get that sense. And so you leave a film and you feel, wow, you're transformed. You experience the film vicariously through the characters, and it becomes part of your human experience, and you can refer back to that as like, oh, do you remember that time when Gimli said this, or Sauron did that, or whatever, and it becomes part of you. So whereas with comics, you are much, much more involved in the actual construction of that experience. So it's different. It internalizes the information in a way that film cannot. And so film is obviously the most popular medium. It's the dominant medium. And we know who created Hollywood and who runs and owns Hollywood. And we know how our enemies use film, entertainment, the arts, including the comic book industry, to demoralize whites, to offend us, to erase us from our own history, from our own art and narrative, literature, etc. So that's why people nationalists in our movement have an extremely important role. And I cannot emphasize that enough, but you have to see it this way, that we're not in a vacuum. The audience is equal to the artist. And so, comics are very easy to consume in terms of a medium. There's web comics that they're not expensive. You can collect them. The collecting aspect of comics is a whole other dimension of it. You can collect DVDs of films and such, but I think there's something about collecting books that, people who love literature and knowledge and art, they get a special feeling from that. It's quite a wonderful feeling. Anyway, what I'm getting to here, though, is that the audience is as important to the artist, and vice versa. There's a kind of symbiosis there that's extremely critical. So I urge your listeners and their networks to get more involved in supporting the arts, finding artists, musicians, etc., out there within the patriotic alternative community, within the white art collective community, clearly myself, and through me, you can reach out to other artists by watching my shows on my channel, etc., etc. So I'm just kind of, tooting the horn there for the arts community. But, so that I hope that answers your question. I try to give a broader view of the topic. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually do appreciate that answer about the comic book medium, because I've for me, whenever there was a point where I wanted to kind of maybe start my own comic or whatever, if that ever will happen, I always kind of thought maybe it might be a bit, of course, dialogue would be easy and all of that, but in terms of like the story structure with the paneling, I thought, well, how am I going to do that? But your explanation that is basically film on paper, I was like, I can't believe I never actually thought of it that way, considering the fact that I would class myself as a bit of a film buff, and I never again saw myself as a film director. But hey, I guess comic books maybe would be a close second. So, but yeah, that's a perfect explanation with that. And your point about with regards to people buying novels or the like, and in the way they want to kind of collect those types of forms of literature. It's actually interesting that you brought this up, because I remember on my show, and I think I did bring this up as a topic, but there seems to be this wider push to try and censor older books, if you will. There was a bit of a controversy came out with the works of Roald Dahl, for instance. There was people that of course, here in this country, people wanted to censor those books because they deemed as insensitive for today's standards, and it's like, right. I just really couldn't stand that, because not just with literature, but just any form of art, because you're censoring art. Art is supposed to be a form of expression, regardless of what that would be or what political side you're on. Like, it's supposed to be you expressing yourself, your views, and whatever. And the fact that there are people that are trying to censor that because, it might be insensitive, but let's be honest here, I think it's another way of trying to, in a way, demoralize white people, in my opinion. It just really sickens me, because it's like taking Michelangelo's David, the famous statue that people know about. It's like, oh, well, he's fully naked, we need to cover the penis. It's like, well, why? Again, it's part of the human body. That's the whole point. Well, many of the points of the statue. Again, you're censoring that. You're basically just censoring art at the end of the day, and that's what I really couldn't stand. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. But anyway, if you don't, even with that topic, I mean, is that something that you follow as well in terms of the push of the censorship with older books? And if so, what would be your take on that?
Sure. This is a very major theme within many of my shows. If you watch any of my shows, you're going to basically hear me kind of do sidebars on that topic a lot. That is entirely my mission, is to oppose the demoralization, the robbery of our art and culture and history. Art is an extension of identity. It is the codification in many ways of a culture. And so it's very, very, very clear that cultural Marxism must subvert the arts in order to erase Europe, in order to erase white culture. And it's done partly with the intent to humiliate us, to demoralize us, to kill our spirit of fighting, to kill our nationalism. It's partly done to teach new generations that, no, you don't have a culture, you don't have a history, and that identity is interchangeable. It's racially interchangeable. It's kind of like a racial trans, if you will, that, Hamlet can be black or something nonsensical like that. And so it's, I mean, for someone like myself who's an artist, this is punching me in the face all day, every day. I can't stand it, and I want to rebel against it. And that is what I do. That's my whole gig, you know. So, and I'm of course not the only person out here doing this. There's quite a lot of people. When the White Art Collective was in its peak under Jeff Winston, we were doing amazing work as a community. It was really, really taking off. So there's quite a lot regarding that I could just go off on a huge tangent. But it's critical that artists in the national sphere take on that role. I mean, artists a lot of times are very absorbed in their own personal lives, their emotions, their anything and everything to do with the, you know, their experience of their life. So that's fine. However, the experience of our life is that we are living through the era of white genocide. We as artists have a kind of shaman role in culture, and we have for probably since time beginning. We are the ones who show the zeitgeist, who express what are, you know, where we came from and where we're going. We are the spear point of culture and flying into the abyss, into the future. And so it's up to us to dig down and have that kind of shamanic experience within our hearts, within our souls, and then to pull up out of that underworld the message for our people now. And so our people are facing white genocide in real time now, all day, every day. And so the artist is now the warrior. It's a sort of a shaman warrior, a priest warrior, who has to create works of inspiration that will rally the people, that will reconnect us to our history, to the greatness of our people, our history, our architecture, literature, painting, on and on and on. And then to give people that kind of cultural weaponry, you know, sort of a sword and a shield, so to speak, through which to go out on their daily lives and be true to themselves, be true to who we are. And there's many, many challenges we experience throughout the day. I know, of course, in England, there are far more draconian laws in place. There's some terrible news about people who have been imprisoned for standing up for white rights, for indigenous rights, for English people who are in jail and who are being cut off from seeing their own children. And I think people in our community know what I'm referring to. This is a stab in the heart to all of us. There's not just one person alone in a cell. Every single one of us are suffering from this kind of abuse, this kind of oppression. And so the artist is the one with the voice, per se, who can make works of art that become the fire from which we dance around. And so I can't overemphasize enough the importance for our community to come to the sort of the spring of water and drink from the well of our culture, the love of our culture. Come to the arts within our sphere, become part of this community, because it's part of your spiritual health. It gives you the mental fortitude, the emotional kind of shielding, if you will, to live within the time, the zeitgeist of what we're experiencing here. And then also to fight the demon, so to speak, because when whites are fully, how do I say, energized and living within our own nationalism, we become standards for other whites around us. We show courage, we show pride, we show strength, we show comfort and confidence in who we are as what we are. And then other whites, because whites in general are very much a kind of an in-group, high-trust society people, culturally will mimic each other. So the more of us that go out there and show that kind of open pride and strength and wisdom and love for our people, then that signals to other whites, yeah, that's what I want to be. That's how I should be. You know what? I am going to be that. I'm going to throw off the the muzzle and the blinders, and I'm gonna throw off all this garbage that we is pushed on us every day, all day, through entertainment and news media and such. How every country does that in their own way is unique to that culture. The way the French express that, and the way the Hungarians express that, and the way Americans express that, that it's going to take its own different cultural forms. However, we all come from the same racial roots, the same biospirit, if you will. There is a racial spirituality in the very deep center of all of this. And from there, we have infinite energy, infinite love, infinite power. We simply have to tap into it, and the arts are the way to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree on that fact. So, just checking the time again. Just want to make sure when it comes to that as well. There is actually one question I wanted to ask.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. And my previous engagement has been delayed, so there's no pressure to close the show off too soon. Okay.
Oh, right. That's fine. No worries. Perfect. Excellent. So another thing I wanted to ask with regards to that fact is sorry, it's just my dog. It's just, I don't know what's up with this case. Yeah, there he goes. There he is.
Oh man, I miss my dog. Oh boy, I wish I had a dog. Yeah. All right, he can be on the show. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, he's just he's happy to see me, I would say. Yeah, but that's him, of course. Right, down you go there. Yeah, actually, there was one question I wanted to ask with regards to kind of going back to comics a little bit. What was your very first comic you've ever read, if you don't mind me asking with that? And also, maybe even to add on to that, did you ever read any of the mainstream comic book company stuff like Marvel and DC? And if so, were you more of a Marvel fan or a DC fan?
So let me first say that I do encourage you to do comics, but I would say try to just, do some small things that, that could fit in a Sunday newspaper, or that you can put on your website. Or you don't have to do a 200-page graphic novel straight out of the gate, but just have fun with it. You have the skills, you have the mind, you have the inspiration and the vocation, so to speak, with this program, etc. So go ahead. I would give it a shot, give it a try. And you can always consult with me, correspond with me. I'm happy to encourage you and anybody in our sphere who's interested in growing in the arts. So there's that. But to get back to your question, where I grew up was, again, the American dream. I lived across the street from a really big playground with lots of kids and summer programs and good fun. And just, I could ride my bike up the street to go to the local shop where I could, if, mom or dad gave me some money, I could go get some candy and a comic book, and then it was just what kids did. That was just a normal thing that you did. You go back to the park and like, oh, what did you get? Oh, I got Spider-Man. I got Green Lantern. I got Hulk. I got Batman. Oh, wow. Let me see how we would kind of share and just enjoy that. And so my uncle actually was an artist, and he went to art school and all this kind of stuff. So every kid draws, and my mom saw that and thought, oh, you're an artist like your uncle, so she got it in her head that, oh, I got the art gene. And actually I would say that I did, because it's really a personality type more than a skill set. Anybody can learn to draw, but it's that spirit of needing to draw, of needing to communicate your feelings, thoughts, experience of reality, etc. So yeah, I think I'm more of a Marvel Comics guy in terms of the stuff I grew up on. But today, currently, Marvel and DC, well, Marvel is owned by Disney. DC Comics is owned by Warner Brothers, and they make all their money from the movies. So they don't care. The corporate heads don't care about comics themselves. They have fired all the old guys, all the white guys, and hired all people of color and LGBT writers and artists. And they're in, like everything else, they're intentionally destroying comics. They're destroying, we got a gay Superman or a black Batman or blah, 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 blah. And the result of that is the Comicsgate movement. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, if you've heard of it. So
sorry, Donald. Yeah, just real quick. To answer that question, yes, I'm fully aware of the Comicsgate movement. As a matter of fact, the person who actually was part of the comic book industry for a long time actually was the main factor of me kind of like following that whole movement, and that was by the name of Ethan Van Sciver, who, for those that don't know, Ethan Van Sciver is a very well-known artist in the comic book industry. He has worked for both Marvel and DC. I think he's more well-known within DC, where he was working with Jeff Johns on Green Lantern, The Flash, and so on and so forth. Funnily enough, two books that, again, got me into those characters to begin with. But yeah, he left DC because of his political leanings, even though I think it's more, not to sound condescending or anything with that at all, but I think he's more of the MAGA right type of conservative leanings. But of course, with that, I'm fully aware of the whole Comicsgate movement with that. But sorry, Donald, you were saying?
Well, a good jump off point right here quickly is that I illustrated a graphic novel with John Della Rose, who is one of the top Comicsgate influencers. If you look up John, Jon Della Rose, Delarroz, he has a fantastic show on YouTube, and he's constantly doing interviews and social commentary. Definitely a MAGA guy, big time. I would venture to say possibly Christian nationalist even. So anyway, long story short, I did a book with him. So that was kind of my foray into Comicsgate. And the big news is he just recently invited me to come back and do another book on the same topic. So I will be getting back into the Comicsgate sphere. I've created Donald Kent Art on Twitter, which is really focused a lot on the Comicsgate community. So if you look up Donald Kent Art on Twitter, you're going to see me interacting with that a lot. There's just so much I could say on that in that field, but to sort of try to get back to your question, the comics world has split in two, just like every other part of politics and culture. But yeah, as far as my personal taste, I became a huge Hellboy fan for a long time. And I guess in the past, like 10 years, whatever. And I actually met Mike Mignola, who is the creator of Hellboy, at a New York City comic book convention. For me, that was a big nerd moment because I showed him my my portfolio of my art. I was just sort of starting out. I'd done fine art. I went to, an art major in college. I lived in Asia for 5 years and studied Chinese painting and Kung Fu and all these things. And so learning to do comic book illustration, I started from zero. I had to kind of teach myself. I had the fortune to meet a couple people in the industry through social media that trained me in various techniques, But when I finally met my hero, Mike Mignola, and I showed him my portfolio, he was like, wow, I can't give you any advice. I love your work. So that I can imagine that just, catapulted me into this, the new world of comic book illustration. I just don't want people to think me as exclusively a comic book artist. I have a very massive fine art background. On my website, kent-art.weebly.com, you can see my book of art and poetry, Imperium Calling, the art and poetry of Donald Kent. And there's different sections. There's a fine art section, poetry section, illustration, and comics. So and that doesn't even include my music. So my music, of course, you can catch at my YouTube channel. And again, I guess you can put links to all that in the show notes. People can go visit those things. So yeah, I'm not great at answering questions very simply. I always have to go off on these giant tangents. It's a kind of, I hope that's okay. But I'm just trying to feed the audience with more information. But yeah, when you go see the comic book movies, I grew up on this information, so like as a kid, I thought I could never imagine comics being on film. And so to sit in the theater and see, say, Fantastic Four or whatever, all any of that stuff, you're kind of blown away by it, and you want to like it. You kind of give away your heart, and you say, "Oh boy, I hope they don't screw this up." So and I have this kind of approach to seeing comic book movies and really most movies, and that is that I have low expectations, and that way I can enjoy the movie. Do you have any question? I see you're at the,
No, I would just say, yeah, I got the website up here. There's some illustrations here as well. With regards to like superhero movies, there was actually one particular film. I was more of like a DC guy myself, and there was one film in particular that I was like that, where I was like, I hope they don't screw this up, because they never made a live action adaptation of this character, and that was 2011's Green Lantern. Now, I'll admit, right, when I watched that for the first time, I liked it, despite the overwhelming negative reviews of the film when it came out.
Yeah.
And I think I liked it as like a cope, where I just wanted to like it so much. Like, it's DC, like it's not, at least it's not Batman and Superman. Like I wanted to, I just wanted to succeed. And I think it was maybe the third time overall, because I bought the film on the Blu-ray when it first came out. And I remember it was my third or fourth time overall watching it, where I at that point I realized, it's like I think I'm starting to realize that, oh, wait a minute, I think it's actually not that great of a film as I thought it would be. And it's a shame too, because like if you read Green Lantern, especially run with the Jeff Johns run and art by Ethan Van Sciver, it's if you love Star Wars, then you'll love Green Lantern, because it's such a it's such a great piece of work, especially if it's split into three parts. The first part was, I believe it was Rebirth, then part 2 it was the Sinestro Corps War, and then part 3 was Blackest Night. And it was just fantastic, especially the Sinestro Corps War. When I was reading it, I was just like, this is just brilliant. And you think it would be, and even with all of that, it's ideal for adapting that onto the big screen, and you think there's no way they could screw that up. Well, funnily, of course, it's Hollywood. Of course, they're going to screw up, one way or another. And of course, there's the whole discussion about who should be the Green Lantern, not in terms of like actors wise, but in terms of the characters, because unlike Superman or Batman, or even with the Marvel context, say like Spider-Man, well, I know they're trying to push Miles Morales, but that doesn't really count in my opinion, because Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Of course.
But you have what is known as the legacy character, so that would be Green Lantern, the Flash, and all of that. And of course, with Green Lantern, they're trying to push John Stewart as the Green Lantern. As a matter of fact, there was a animated film that came out by DC and Warner Brothers and the like. It's Green Lantern, but I think it's Beware My Power, or the subtitle of it, I think it was. And of course, they got John Stewart as the Green Lantern. While Hal Jordan did exist, but this was after the whole Parallax storyline within the context of the story. He became an evil douchebag, and of course, I looked at that from a nationalist perspective of, black guy, good, white man, evil, and all of that. And I'm just like, they really just can't help themselves, can they, with that? And I also remember, do you remember, with regards to, again, with the big comic book companies, do you remember the whole controversy with Wally West being black? Because I remember when that happened at the time, and I think that was one of the points where it started to kind of make me think, well, hold on a minute here, because as if you know your comic book lore, especially DC or Flash lore, you'll know that Wally West was a white redhead. Well,
of course,
during the New 52 run, DC decided to make him a black character, and of course, gaslighting all the fans. Were just like, oh, well, I mean, Wally West has always been a black character. And if you think otherwise, then you have to be a racist, that sort of idea. And
Sure.
I, it was, of course, looking back on that, like it was pretty ridiculous. But I think that was maybe one of the many examples of what maybe it became a bit more red pill, if you will, with regards to that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but yeah,
This is a really,
so
really
it's quite interesting, kind of looking back on that type of stuff. So, but yeah,
I can definitely, jump on that topic. So in Marvel, they had the New Avengers, which was like teenagers that were like all based on the key Avengers. You had like, Teen Thor, Teen Hulk, Teen Hawkeye, whatever, something, and Teen Iron Man or whatever. And two of the characters had to be gay. And the author of that book is a Small Hat tribe member. And this was a good, I don't know, 5 years before Trump came in or anything. And the internet was on fire with people fighting about this. People were going back and forth. And it was kind of the early days of let's infiltrate. See, people have to understand this. They're superheroes are American mythology. Okay, we don't. Yes, of course, we're from Europe, etc., and we have Europe has mythology. But if we look at America as a young infant country without that type of history, it's actually superheroes that we look to, like in a contemporary sense, for those heroic lessons. You see, and yeah, of course, the Small Hats wrote and invented a lot of those superheroes. So there's definitely, this has been infiltrated from the beginning, right? But set that aside for a second. There's definitely a very strong nationalist spirit in most superheroes, and it's, the truth, justice, and the American way, blah, blah, blah. But when they started to try to racially swap out characters, when they tried to create like girl boss superheroes that are leading the way, and which is feminism essentially, and then the LGBT agenda, everybody was just, it was like a giant fist fight in there in terms of like the social media. Comic book fans are very serious about this content. They care a lot about the lore, and it's not just entertainment, it's culture, it's identity. And this is the thing I'm trying to get people to understand. So I mean, we could compare fan bases between, say, like sports fans versus, music fans versus comic book fans, for example. Those are, or Star Wars fans or something. They're different fan bases, they're cultures, they're subcultures, right, in a way. And people connect their identity to these things. So for better or for worse, it's what we do, right? So I don't know. It's kind of like if you were to, I don't know, make like in sports, you had to make sure that you had disabled people on the field. Every team has got to have at least 10% disabled people, and they're going to be in their wheelchairs running around kicking the ball in a football game. Like, the fans would lose their minds if the industry of sports and like forced that onto them. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of, that's maybe a dumb analogy, but I'm trying to think of like, how can people connect to this and identify with this? It's sort of like if somebody came home and said, "Oh, I'm your dad now." You're not my dad, Yeah, I'm your dad now. Just, I'm the new guy and you're gonna have to accept me as this person in your family. Like, no, I don't like, when you see characters you grew up with change so radically into some other character, but yet they have the name of the character and or the suit of the character. You're not stupid. You see what's happening and you're disgusted by it. You're offended by it. And all of it is social engineering. It's all Small Hat social engineering. And so this is the beginning of the end of an industry. This is the beginning of the end of a culture. And so that again is why, Comicsgate exists. That's why we exist, entirely, because we weren't allowed to just exist in our normal, natural way, in our biological reality. So, but you can't change biology. Now, the cultural Marxism would love to say, oh, a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy, and a black person can be a white person, and blah, blah, blah. But that is against nature and God and truth. And we will never accept that. And so there is no way, you know, other than to kill us off, you know, and to like completely genocide us. We will never submit to that insanity. So, and bring it back down to the smaller point here, from the metapolitical to the just the normal everyday stuff. Comics fans are fighting tooth and nail to keep that, and so they've lost control, obviously, of that narrative. So, you know, Comicsgate is just exploding with new fans and new creators, and I'm so happy to be a part of that.
That is fantastic. Yes, indeed. There is a now. I have to ask this question because I've expressed this on my show before with regards to like Medium and or even media and all of that at all, and I'm sure you yourself may have been asked about this as well, because whether you like this genre of the comic book medium or not, it is pretty popular at the moment, and I know it's garnered a lot of mainstream attention, if you will. But I think it needs to be asked for the show itself. What is your thoughts on manga or Japanese comic books?
Interesting. It's funny because people who my fans, they know that already, because I've covered that stuff a good bit, because it's actually a big subject in the comic book culture, if you know, per se. So now, number one, I lived in Japan for a year. I went there to study Zen Buddhism. I studied painting, literature, arts. I studied some of the language. I wasn't really there to study the language, but more or less art and Buddhism. So, and then when I came back, I lived in New York City, where I worked for a Japanese corporation for 2 years teaching English. So I'm very much, you know, absorbed into that culture. I have a love for the culture. They are soon to be our very close allies, because they are next on the chopping block for globalism. I'm not sure how much our people are aware that they're now being forced to accept brown immigrants from around the world, because they have to be destroyed as a culture in order for the small hats to you know, turn the whole world into one big Goyim farm, if you will. But anyway, here, simplify. No metapolitics. Get back to the answer. Okay, manga. So manga literally is the Japanese word for comics. That's just the translation. And I have a problem with it, because you can like manga. That's totally fine. That's all good and well. But don't replace American, Western, European comics for Japanese comics. You're committing cultural suicide by doing that. Our comic book history, literature, etc., is phenomenal and extraordinary. And why do you think the Japanese even came up with the concept of creating comics? They got the idea from us, you see. So they have their own style, history, storytelling, culture, yada yada. That's fine to like that, but not at the sacrifice and destruction of your own history. So people who are obsessed with manga and that type of culture, they tend to adopt a fake, like, comic book convention, Comic-Con culture, in a sense. They're obsessed with it. They love it. They think they're special because, oh, I'm into manga. You know, you're not special because of that. It's a fan base. That's all. But you know, whatever, that makes them feel unique and like, ooh, I'm fancy. You know, it's like if I take a karate class and then I go to the grocery store with my karate uniform on and say, yeah, I'm better than you, I do karate. You know, it's just kind of dumb, you know, it's silly. So it's okay to like it, but read your own stuff, read up on your own history. Heavy Metal was a comic book magazine that I grew up on as well. And that's where I, you know, because Marvel Comics, DC Comics it's got the comic book code. It's for kids. There's no nudity in adult situations. There's no political or metaphysical spiritual content there per se on that kind of level. So you've got the Warren magazines, Creepy Eerie. You've got all of this gigantic amount of adult literature that is sequential art, that is what we call comics. And so anything and everything that you would want that manga could possibly have is within our culture already. It just doesn't have that exotic sushi flavor to it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a little annoyed at people who are obsessed with manga because I feel like, well, that's okay, but you see what I'm saying? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, 100%. Like, that's something I have noticed fairly recently, and I'll be honest, I've been guilty of that myself because, again, with anime and manga, it's something that I've kind of grown up with, type of thing. Just like with American comic books, and I can. I'm definitely on the same boat where it's completely fine to like manga, despite the fact you can make an argument. There's some works that are pretty degenerate, if you will. Although saying that, there are some works within manga that are actually worthwhile, like
Mhm.
Berserk, for instance,
Mhm.
or even like Fist of the North Star, in my opinion. But I have noticed that there seems to be a lot more, as you said, like a lot more appreciation for manga than there is for, say, American comics or British comics or even just like European art in general. And I've
Mhm.
always wondered, well, what is it about manga that you appreciate that more than you do, say, artwork within your homeland type of idea? Like, it's just,
Mhm.
even when it comes to manga, again, despite the fact it's very subjectable, but I've always thought of it as like manga is basically comic books done in more of a Japanese style. But what
Yes.
we're seeing now is even people who are getting into the comic book industry seem to be borrowing a lot more of the manga look, if you will,
Yeah.
despite the fact it's manga is again American comics, but done more like a Japanese style. It's kind of like in the way of like lost in translation type of idea,
Mm.
which is again pretty sad to see. But hopefully, with stuff like the White Art Collective or anything like that at all, we can maybe try and influence people a lot more. Like, well, you may like that stuff, but hey, have a look at this stuff. Stuff
Right.
from your own people that's actually pretty good. So
Sure. So I forget the gentleman's name, but the guy who started comics in Japan, I think in the 1950s, he was trying to create his version of Walt Disney movies, but in comics. So it was. So you should think that, for example, the Big Eyes.
would that be?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say, yeah. Would it be Osamu Tezuka? His name
I
was.
think you're right. I'm sorry I don't remember his name, but yeah. So he essentially was trying to do his version of what Walt Disney movies looked like. And then obviously he's making stories for his own audiences. So that, culturally, that's all what it is. But there's the thing you have to understand is that the Japanese are literally the opposite of us culturally in the sense that you as an individual are only meaningful within the context of your clan. You don't introduce yourself by your first name, but by your last name. And that culturally, individualism is at the very bottom of the social ladder, so to speak. Whereas in the West, it's actually, especially in America, it's more at the top, where, I'm Donald Kent and this is who I am. I'm not defined by my family or my class in society, or et cetera, et cetera. So from my perspective, manga, everybody kind of looks the same and they all kind of look like aliens. They have like these big eyes and small mouths. And I find that very creepy, that there's a uniformity and there's a lack of individuality in the characters. I think that there's some very weird sexual elements of Japanese society that finds its way into manga, which I find very creepy. So that's a big turnoff to me. I just can't. It just doesn't grab me. I don't have a love for it. I do respect it, though. I would say that both, of course, animation, that I would say the Japanese are probably the best in the world in terms of animation techniques and the art of animation and such. But that is just that's just the wrapping. And because if the story isn't any good and the dialogue isn't any good and the character relationships don't work, then all of the effort into these phenomenal detailed animation scenes is really just fluff. Do you get my point? So the Japanese stories, manga stories and anime stories they're guilty of what in American literature is called adta, which means one damn thing after another. And so if you're a script writer, this is the world of like literature, book writing, etc. You don't just have this happened and then that happened and then this happened and then that happened and then this happened. That's absurd. It's just a bunch of junk. There needs to be a story, where there's a structure. But it seems that that's okay in Japanese manga and anime. Don't ask me why, but I can't follow the stories. I don't like that. I like things to have a beginning, middle, and an end. I want to see a cause and effect relationship between things. I'm sure there's manga and anime people out there that would just love to fight me over that right now, and that's fair. That's fair enough. But I'm just pretty much sharing my own views on that and pretty much trying to redirect people over to the Comicsgate audience and classic comics, comics that we grew up on, and even heavy metal, like European comics. There's so much, Belgian comics, French comics. It's such a rich world of incredible illustration and unique, wonderful ideas and such. So anyway, that kind of wraps that, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's ideal. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with liking manga, but there comes a point where it's like, people need to have an appreciation for, your own people's artwork type of idea. And there was actually something I wanted to ask in regards to yourself when it comes to art. Which artists were the biggest influence for you the most when it comes to your artwork?
So I wouldn't say that it's one or a few artists, but rather an era in arts, in comic book art. So for me, the 1970s was an era. It's called the Bronze Age. Technically, it's the beginning of the 80s for a while as well. It's like, I forget the exact dates or whatever, but the Bronze Age to me is a time in American comics when comics were very lively, it was a really great time that was very Americana. It had, comics readers had grown up from children to college students, and they wanted more complex and interesting stories. They wanted more realistic art. And then you had a gigantic new generation of great artists coming in with new and interesting ideas. The characters within comics were no longer just goofy, fun characters to entertain children, but had, problems like alcoholism or divorce or, various issues that adults have, And so the Bronze Age is really, this 1970s is an age that I think excited me. The early 80s, somewhere around the mid 80s, the comic book industry, mainstream comics were plummeting. They were kind of falling. It was sort of the industry almost crashed itself. And I think Marvel and DC were just kind of hiring anybody that could hold a pencil. And so I think the art quality dropped off a bit. And then I sort of lost interest after that. But then in the 90s, they got rid of the Comics Code. And then you had all this new, another generation of people coming in that had most like photorealistic style art. And so that's cool and interesting, but it's also kind of a shtick, sort of like, oh, wow, neat. And then what? So I think if it's too photorealistic, it loses the fantasy element. And to me, that doesn't work well with the medium of like, or rather the genre of superheroes. I like superheroes to be realistic enough, but also to have that bang, it's got to have that fun, exaggerated quality to it that is unique. And I am only talking about the superhero genre. There's no other art medium that is exclusively associated with a genre. People have to see the difference between genre and medium. So, for example, if I said, "Oh, I'm going to see a band tonight," and you'd say, "Oh, wow, what country music is it?" Nobody would ever say that, right? But if I say, "Oh, I'm going to the comic book shop," like, "Oh, what superhero book are you buying?" Well, no, there's there's historic fiction, there's romance, there's westerns. It's not, comics are not exclusive to superheroes. So let's just kind of bring that out again on as far as like a general topic. But yeah, so try to answer the question. John Buscema is one of the gods of comics. He was the house style for Marvel Comics for a long time. People sort of had to copy his style because his books sold the most. Interestingly, I'm not a Jack Kirby fan. Jack Kirby is one of the gods of comics. Joseph Katzenberg is his real name. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But anyway, I find his work weird a bit. Yeah, I see you laughing there. So I will give credit where credit's due. There's a lot of Jewish artists that are fantastic in the comics industry. Gil Kane, for one, is a big influence on me. I like he's got this superhero-y energy to him. But there's also artists from heavy metal that, like Jean Girard, Mobius was a big influence on me. There's a guy named Fernando Fernandez or something. He's a Spanish artist. There are a lot of great Spanish artists. Esteban Maroto. These are guys that if you read heavy metal and the Warren magazines, you would know these names because they do that kind of more like Conan style stuff or science fiction and things that are adult oriented. There's more nudity and violence in that kind of art. And we don't talk about those guys so much, but these guys were like gods, in terms of illustration. Their comic book illustration is phenomenal. So anyway, I could nerd out about that for another 10 hours if you want. Anyway, maybe you want to show some of my artwork, some of the comics stuff, or I have like YouTube shorts with some comics examples there. I don't know if you can put that on screen.
Yeah, I'll just get YouTube up right now. I'll see if it definitely works because my internet, for some odd reason, is acting up. But I'll see if I can get them.
Maybe it's because we're working across the pond here. Maybe that's what the problem is. I don't know. Or maybe the FBI.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I am on a watch list, so maybe there's some nefarious people trying to shut down the show.
Let me see here.
So yeah, Jean Girard, Mobius. This guy is a great French artist who, and people who know comics art would certainly know who he is. But interesting thing about him is that he and Alejandro Jodorowsky were going to do the Dune film, and Jodorowsky lost the job to I forget the guy's name off the top of my head right now, but like the original Dune movie. I'm angry at myself for forgetting. But anyway, Mobius did all these designs for that film that are really cool. You can look those up, original designs for the Dune film. He also designed the sets and the costumes for the film Alien. So that's some pretty cool stuff as well. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's just something, comics opens up a window to another world, the way mythology does. And you sort of want to live in that world. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Were you able to get anything up, or is it internet is too shaky right now?
I just mute myself. Yeah, I'm just on your channel right now. There's the shorts here at the moment. Now I'm gonna play some of the shorts. I believe the ones that you've sent me on Telegram.
St. George.
There's one of them right there.
Yeah.
St. George Kills the Dragon. Yep, we'll play that then. Now let's see here.
See if your audio works.
mountains will shake. The castle wall, the ring razor iron black. Ride on!
That's actually really fantastic. That so, with this one, Donald, like, what gave you the idea to do this piece with the St. George?
Right. So this is one of the pieces from the Monday show with Patriotic Art Live.
Mm.
I believe it was St. George Day in the UK or something, and we decided let's do something on that theme. You know what I'm saying? The play you
Yeah.
can there's lots of stuff there. It seems like the internet connection's not that great, but a lot of the themes in there obviously have a lot to do with our history, our culture. And I don't do comic book style on every single work of art I do. I have sort of, that is a little more fine art, in terms of its style and flavor. And I just, for me personally, I love reconnecting with, my cultural heritage in the UK. So it's fun to do stuff like that. And there you go.
Excellent. That's good stuff. Perfect. Yeah, well, not to worry when it comes to the videos. I'm sure because again this will be edited. I can easily add them onto this video or this recording anyway. So that should be pretty ideal. So,
Okay.
let me see here. There was actually one Let me see here. Yeah, that's actually a good question to ask. Have you ever done any portraits? Say, like, 'cause there's one video here of yourself doing portrait of Francis Parker Yockey, I think the gentleman's name is.
Correct.
So,
The author of Imperium, correct. Yeah, that portrait was actually auctioned off. And there's a guy who goes by the name Cultured Thug, who has a show on Third Position Fascism on Rumble. He's I would say maybe the expert on Third Position and all the different forms of fascist schools or ideologies throughout Europe. I highly recommend his channel. It's really goes into some deep dives on academics and history. He reads a lot from books about the topic from, well-educated authors, people that were involved in that political sphere. Anyway, he was the highest bidder on that painting, so he got it. And I've had him on Imperium Art to discuss things. He's had me on his show. So yeah, I was when you're an artist and you want to make money, portraiture is one of the easy go-tos. I did caricature art for many years. I used to work at, craft fairs and outdoor events and weddings and various things and kind of market myself as a caricature artist. Makes great money. It's a lot of fun. Good way to meet girls as well. And this and that. And so it's just fun. I don't like define myself as a caricature artist. It's just a skill. It's like, if you can play a guitar, you can play country music, rock and roll, jazz, some this or that or whatever. You can play different things for different audiences. So, but doing sort of more realistic art, rather portraiture that expresses something, that a love for a certain person or someone in your family or your friends or someone in history that you care about. That's a more fine art kind of thing. And that's really something I'm attracted to, but it's harder to sell. You see what I'm saying? So I did one of the themes for the Patriotic Art Live show was General Lee. This is a figure in American history who there's statues that were torn down of him, Robert E. Lee. People might be aware of this in your audience, but in America in the past, I don't know, since Trump, Antifa have been tearing down, and Black Lives Matter have been tearing down these Robert E. Lee statues. And it's one way of destroying our history. It's one way of humiliating white people. And they say, oh, you know, he was on the wrong side of the war, you know, the South, and, you know, slaves and this and that, and Black Lives Matter, and on and on. The truth in history is he wasn't those things. But if the small hat Marxists tell you he is, then he is. And again, that kind of destroying of white history is part of their whole anti-white racism. It's their way of hurting us symbolically. And so there was a news story about the leaders of the Black Lives Matter attended an event where they were melting down the statue of Robert E. Lee and enjoying it and making a party out of it. And this is how despicable and low these people are. This is how much they hate us. And so there was a photograph of the head of the statue that was kind of glowing orange from being in this fire, from melting it. And that triggered, you know, Patriarch and myself, and it's like, okay, we need to do a show on Robert E. Lee. And I did a portrait of him. Patriarch did some kind of digital art portrait of him. But the idea is, if they're going to destroy his likeness, then we're going to create his likeness. So that's weaponizing portraiture for nationalism. And that's like, for example, me doing a portrait of Francis Parker Yockey. It's a way of immortalizing him, because art, in a sense, is immortality. If you can, you know, if there's a statue of somebody or a painting of somebody, or even a book about somebody, it's meant in some way to immortalize them in history. So again, that's kind of the power of the artist. That's the role of the artist. And we need more arts weaponized in this way, in terms of, like, you know, maintaining our history and inspiring our people to fight for our future. And that's all I got to say on that. Actually, I have much more to say on that, but that's the main thing. Yeah.
No worries. Well, that's perfect. Excellent. I'm just looking at the time, and now it is 8:45 where I am just now. So, and I did say that I would do the show for about an hour and a half, maybe up to 2 hours, but I would continue on. It's just I don't really have any more questions to ask. I pretty much have asked the questions. You've answered them perfectly with that. Really,
Can
the
I
only
ask
thing
you a
that I could really ask is, yeah, of course, go ahead. Mhm.
So if you were to start doing your own comics, what would the themes be? What would the characters be? What would the style be?
Right. That question. Considering the fact that I am developing, I do have an idea, and I'm sort of developing it at the moment. Is actually an idea I've had for a long, long time. I would say back in my high school years, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
And it is to do with like the supernatural or the paranormal. Basically, the idea of it came around when the film Twilight was out at the time, and Twilight is an absolute dog shit of of a vampire type of story, but it was really popular with the girls I know. But I wanted to make a series at that time that was more like a response to Twilight. Like, no, that's not what a vampire is. This is what a vampire is.
Okay.
But throughout the years, and of course, doing other things, getting more into politics and whatnot, and of course now being an ethno-nationalist, I still had that idea lingering in my head. But I was kind of thinking, right, if I were to have this idea come to fruition, what would I do with it? And then it just instantly dawned on me that, well, why don't I just make it about nationalism and the corruption with the countries just now being occupied by a foreign force, and the idea of being a proper collective with your own kin type of idea. And yeah, I just thought, oh, you know what, I can actually maybe do it do this kind of idea. And in terms of like the style of it, I it's something that I've been kind of going over back and forth with myself because, and I'll be honest, right, going back to the subject matter of manga,
Mm.
that has kind of made a bit of an influence on my art style kind of thing. And with regards to this idea, I do want to kind of pull myself away from that style and maybe go back to the more traditional European type of style to it.
Right.
But that being said, of course, it's going to be more like a comic book. I want it to be kind of maybe some form of style to it. But
Mhm.
that part, I'm not entirely too sure, considering the fact that it's been again a long time since I last
Yeah,
drew
yeah.
anything.
Right, right, right.
But
You'd have to warm
I
up
do
a
have
lot.
this. Was that sorry?
I said you would have to warm up and get back into the flow of it. I want to just
Yeah.
say, please reach out to me anytime you want to talk about it or you want to have art to show or anything I can help you with. I'm happy to.
Yeah, cool. I do have a sketchbook, but it's not, again, there's only like maybe 2, 3 pages filled at the moment because I've been busy with other things. But I do have that as a way of, again, kind of helping me to get back into art and design a lot more.
Right.
So, and even with that, I do have a notebook that I write stuff down for my ideas on what I want to do and all of that. I think
Mhm.
I've actually bought 2 of them, in fact. One of them is more about the story structure and the characters, and one is about the overall universe in which this series takes place in and the different races and creeds and all of that. So yeah,
Cool.
we'll definitely wait and see with that. Um, but yeah, so that's my idea at the moment when it comes to that. So I guess we can maybe end the stream or even the episode here with this final question I would ask you, and
Okay.
that is, what is your, or do you have any advice for any up and coming artists or people who might want to get into the art scene, especially
Mhm.
for the White Art Collective?
Right.
What would be your overall advice for those young artists?
Yes. So the art, yeah, how do I say the art establishment is extremely anti-white and anti-male and anti-straight. So be very, very careful if you're going to go to school to learn any kind of skills. I would strongly recommend looking up any school or teacher that can teach you traditional skill sets. Um, I would also consider really looking online or looking for private teachers. That it's just because the institution of art right now is in a really, really bad place. Um, the thing of it is that it's all about the work. It's just all sit-ups and push-ups. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of how do I say? In order to do all the work to become a good artist, you are driven by your need to express yourself, which is really literally who you are as a person. So tap into that force and shine as brightly as you can. Don't get too carried away with trends, with other artists, with trying. You can only be the best version of yourself. That is your mission, not to copy somebody else or be somebody else. Part of being an artist is not just the skill sets, because that's just the grammar and the linguistics of expression, but it's being somebody. It's knowing who you are, where you fit in the world, what you have to say, what is unique about you. And that's going to change over time. So, for example, if you're fascinated with, say, indigenous European religion or I don't know, nudes or something more decorative arts, etc. That's okay. Go and indulge yourself. It has to be fun. You have to love what you do, because it's the love and the play that gives you the energy to get through the work side of it, the skill sets that you have to build. Don't don't ever have sort of low standards for yourself. Always shoot for the stars. It's going to be hard. You're going to find, man, this is really hard to learn this particular skill. fight it, fight it, fight it. Just kill it, own it. Be the king or the queen of your domain, you see. So do the work, but allow the love of expression to be the fuel that makes you move forward. And get in touch with me, contact me. I've been involved in this in a long time. I'm one of the founding members of the White Art Collective. I would say that I'm carrying the torch among a few other of the founding members in our own way. So the door is wide open. Reach out to me, and I would love to meet you. And there you go. So I want to thank you so much for having me on this show. This has been really, really cool. And actually, I would like to have you on my show sometime so we can kind of go over everything you've done with the Chief Moody Hour. That'd be great.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you know where to find me, of course, on Telegram and whatnot. And if you want me on your show, I'd be very happy to do so with that. And of course, we'll definitely see sort of something out. But yeah, honestly, that's very great advice for people that want to get into art more with that. And yeah, overall, I just really want to thank you again, despite the technical difficulties with the show and all. And of course, I got a dog with me at the moment with that. But with that, we have powered on through, and I really do greatly appreciate your time being on the show. What I will do is because again, I'm going to edit the overall episode. I will include some of your videos and all of your other work that you've done. I'll even also pop in some of the artists you've mentioned on the stream, as say your influences and all of that, as again to give a bit of an idea for people on who this artist is and what their work has been done and all of that. So I'll definitely watch the stream again and see if I can get an idea on the whose art I should have on the stream, the type of idea. And yeah, with that, thank you very much again, and I hope to have you on the show again at some point in the future. And yeah, again, thank you very much for being on the show.
Sure. Okay. God bless. And God bless to the audience. I look forward to being in touch and continuing all the work that we do.
No worries. Thank you again, Donald. You take care. Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Let me see here. There we go. Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. And again, I apologize for the blank screen there. It's the connection hasn't really been great at the moment here, but again, I appreciate Donald coming on, and hopefully he'll come back on the show at some point. And I look forward to being on his show again. If you would like to have me on, that would be fantastic. And yeah, with that, folks, that's going to be the end of Mood of the Nation episode 204. It's fantastic to have Donald Kent on the show, and yeah, I hope everyone. Just 1 second, just replying to this message. Almost finished. There we go. But yeah, I hope everyone that has appreciated this episode. I know art and design somewhat might be a bit of a what's the word? Maybe a bit of a hit and miss for some people, but I think there's an argument to be made that art it does play an integral part into society, because there is the old saying that art imitates life, or so on, or vice versa, and whatnot. So I hope everyone does enjoy the episode, and I hope to maybe talk about this topic again in the near future, whether I have Donald on, or maybe the Patriarch on the show at some point, and maybe see from there. So yeah, that's going to be the end of this episode. Thank you all once again for watching. This is Chief Moody signing out. I will be back for episode 205 on Thursday, which would be the 6th of June, I believe it is. Yeah, Thursday, the 6th of June. That will be 6 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, if you live in America, of course. And yeah, that's going to be it. So thank you very much again. This is Chief Moody signing out. You have been watching the Mood of the Nation podcast, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you all, and good night. Take care. Or good day, sort of thing. Anyway, take care.